Welcome to Woman on Her Path. Every woman has her own unique path. But what does that mean? How does said woman know what her path is? How does she find the courage to follow her path? I am your host, Tiffany Cooper. I am a mother, energy worker, community herbalist, and bhakti yogi. By sharing my experiences and insights on my path, I hope to inspire and encourage you on yours. When we follow our path, we find the answers we need in life. Let's find answers together and create a better world for ourselves and those around us. Hello, precious beings. I am recording the introduction to this episode on Ekadasi, a day of fasting from beans and grains for practitioners of bhakti and other Hindu-based spiritual traditions. Ekadasi is always magical for me because I know that I'm doing something that will deepen my spiritual practice. And fasting from beans and grains also has been shown to be beneficial for the body because the body digests them slowly. So when we fast from them, we give our digestive system a rest so that that energy can be redirected toward other systems of the body. Now, Ekadasi comes the 11th lunar day of the lunar calendar, meaning 11 days after the full moon and 11 days after the new moon. So it's not a demanding fasting schedule at all. Fasting is a wonderful process because when we fast, we give all of our organs time to rest and heal. The body has to work hard to keep up with our erratic lifestyles. When we don't get proper rest, when we eat poorly or at different times every day, coupled with high levels of stress, we end up abusing our bodies. And of course, that results in illness. If we just take care of ourselves in simple ways, we avoid most bodily discomfort and disease. We need to support and encourage one another to take care of ourselves. Society pushes us to do the opposite in almost every aspect. Employers want us to work like animals without any consideration for what is best for our psychological and physical states. Advertisers tempt us to purchase junk food, in quotation marks, because it hardly even resembles food, without consideration for our health. Learning about this basic yet crucial part of our lives is treated as a specialized course of study. Knowing how to care for our bodies on a daily basis is an absolute need. It directly affects our health. Even more important than caring for the body is caring for our spirit souls. So many people reject religion because throughout history, it has been stripped of spirituality and used to control people. There have been inquisitions and wars and fights still go on today. These are very serious things, but I laugh because the whole premise of them is absurd. Man will do almost anything for power and control. But most of all, at the heart of developing a relationship with the divine is choice. There is no coercion or force involved. We cannot be made to love. In addition, religion has often been reduced to ritualistic performance without understanding of its purpose or true connection to its meaning, leaving people doubtful or unfulfilled. So they turn their backs on religion and lose the chance to connect with their spirit souls. But if we neglect our souls, then we neglect the deepest part of ourselves. We live unfulfilled lives and constantly chase after happiness, only to find it for short periods of time. I am reminded of a stanza from my favorite Rumi poem, Gamble Everything for Love. Gamble everything for love, if you're a true human being. If not, leave this gathering. Half-heartedness doesn't reach into majesty. You set out to find God, but then you keep stopping for long periods at mean-spirited roadhouses. People realize that they need to connect with something greater than themselves, with something divine. Yet they keep, as Rumi says, stopping at mean-spirited roadhouses. And God does not reside there. We need to feed our spirit souls regularly with truth and not misinterpretation for selfish gain. We need to find that path that speaks to our souls and not just a path that speaks loudly. I know from experience over and over again that once we are on our path, everything becomes clear. We see beyond what is right there in front of us. We see exactly what we need to see. But we have to be on our path to do so. Now, getting to our very special episode today, I got the opportunity to talk to someone who inspires me to stay on my path of bhakti, Pranada Comtois. She is a longtime practitioner of bhakti, an author, and a woman firmly on her path. Enjoy what Pranada has to say. Take in her words and let them provoke your mind and especially your heart. I am so very fortunate to know so many extraordinary women who are following their path. And my guest today, Pranada Comtois, is certainly one whose influence I cherish very much. Pranada is an inspiration for me on the path of bhakti. I admire her dedication and the way she uses her natural talents in service. She has written beautiful books, Wise Love and Bhakti Shakti, and she has supported women who are also on the path of bhakti during difficult times. Hare Krishna, Pranana. Welcome to Woman on Her Path. I'm so happy to see you today.
Very happy to be with you, Tiffany. Very glad.
So before we get started, is there anything else that you would like to add to my introduction of you? What else can be said about you?
Well, I very much appreciate your interest in serving and empowering women. It's been a lifelong interest of mine, and I think that we need to support each other as sisters. So I'm very pleased with to serve in any way the work that you're attempting to offer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. So let's get to some questions. So the first thing I'd like to ask is how long have you been on the path of bhakti?
Yeah, a little while, almost 50 years.
Wow.
I encountered bhakti. I was born and raised in San Francisco. Well, I was born in San Francisco and raised in Marin County, at the height of the counterculture. And so I was exposed to a large variety of philosophies and ideas, and I was quite a voracious reader and had significant interest in finding a spiritual path, you would say. So I took advantage of the environment that I was in and really explored a lot of the options available, from attending. I think it was one of the first meetings that Werner Eckhart held at the Jack Tar Hotel in San Francisco to introduce EST, which later became Landmark. And I sat in the like whatever ballroom or whatever where he was speaking in Jack Tar Hotel with my mother's girlfriend, because they knew that I had such an appetite for anything spiritual. I was searching. I was only 13 at the time.
Oh, wow.
And so I was in this room with about 250 people listening to Werner Erhard, and he was explaining the transformation he had had on the Golden Gate Bridge and how he had something to offer the world. And he went on and he was pitching his weekend seminar. But I wasn't moved. In fact, the adults in the room were very moved, but I felt what I had heard from him was like a mixture of things I had read about in a lot of different places. And he was bringing it together in an interesting way, but it didn't move me. So I moved on and continued my search, went and looked, regularly visited the new Zen Buddhist temple on Page Street in San Francisco, and had just opened, and listened to the masters there and did some Zazen meditation and read all the books, of the time. We had, Carlos Castaneda coming out with all those books. And my father was, a Carlos Castaneda fan. So reading all of those. And then you had, Jonathan Livingston's De Siegel, and just, I can't even remember all the books. And of course we had the autobiography of a yogi was released right around that time. In fact, I went to the bookstore in Sausalito. I took a bus and then a boat into Sausalito from where we lived to get a copy of Autobiography of a Yogi for my father's 34th birthday. Yeah, and I was reading because I was searching so deeply. I'd asked my father if he would read with me at night when he got home from work. So we were reading all these books together. I was 13 and 14 years old. And I remember we started, I felt, and of course we had Be Here Now, by Ram Dass. That was like a huge hit. And that was very enthralling. Nothing was like ringing the bell loud enough for me. And I then we looked at Girdef and Ouspensky and their work. And then I woke up like this, there's something here. But what was missing was, how do you live the worldview that they were presenting, which was fascinating to me. And, that we're a soul, we're not the body. And we have a potential as spiritual beings that don't exist if we're just living on the surface of life. And it just completely grabbed my attention. But again, it didn't have a path laid out where you could, okay, if I think like this and I believe like this, what does my daily life look like? So that was lacking, and I was really still searching. And some, at that time, when I went to go buy my father the book Autobiography of a Yogi, I was in the Tides bookstore in Sausalito, just enthralled by all the books around me. I was just like, oh, I could stay here forever. It was so wonderful. And I saw these two little books on the shelf below, practically on the ground. You know, the Tides bookstore was kind of like a funky store, and they had shelves everywhere. But these two little books on the ground floor caught my attention. I reached down, I picked them up. They were out of, view, really. All the other books were clearly in view, and in shelves were eye level and just, waist level above. You could see them, but these were hiding. I grabbed them. One was Beyond Birth and Death. And I was like, what is that? And then the other one was Easy Journey to Other Planets. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. Easy Journey to Other Planets. Where are we going? And turned on the back side of the book, and here's this Swami I'd never seen before. And something caught my attention. And I would have to say, given how strongly it caught my attention, in retrospect, I think of it more as, something sparked the awareness from a past. There was something there waiting to just, fuel to be added, and then you come alive, right? It's yours, it's you, it's something crucial to like who you are. Anyway, so those books grabbed my attention. I got them, but I didn't read them right away. Because I got diverted. My parents decided to sell everything, absolutely everything, buy a Jeep and a 27-foot trailer, pack our lives into that, and drive south.
Wow.
And the idea was this was going to be our new life, and we were going to Honduras to start a scuba diving business. My father decided this is what he wanted to do. I did not want to do this. But anyway, I was along for the ride. I was a little too young to make a different choice. So we moved through Mexico. And as we were moving through Mexico, the huge hurricane hit Honduras, wiped out a huge portion of the country. It was devastated. So we had to change our plans, and we decided to go to Santo Domingo. And so we went to the edge of Mexico, sold everything we had, and took one suitcase each on a plane to Santo Domingo to start a scuba diving business, which didn't really take off, although I did learn scuba diving. And then, as things were not working out very well for us there, my sister came to visit us, and she brought with her 2 boxes of things that had been left in California when we left on this trip that I had no idea even existed. I thought everything was gone, but she brought these 2 remaining boxes of our belongings. And I was curious. So I went and I sat down on the floor in front of these boxes, and I opened up the box, and oh my God, there was Beyond Birth and Death, An Easy Journey to Other Planets that I'd never read. And why, of all the things, would those remain? They followed me all around the world, and there they were. So I picked them up and read them, and I had a major transformative experience. It's impossible to put in words when your whole worldview shifts so, like, the tectonic, ground shifts on every level, so that you're no longer standing on the same ground. And I just had a very, very profound experience. No, I am not this body. I am not this mind. I am not the daughter of these people. Right now, I'm in this position, but this is not who I am. And it came over me with such force that I could, from then on, I never saw the world the same. It was seeing really with the eyes of the soul, and perceiving what's beyond the veil of illusion, and then hankering to act beyond the veil of illusion all the time. And then I found out, of course, that there were ashrams where you could enter and practice the way of bhakti. So I opted to do that at 16. And it's been since I was 16. So that's almost 50 years ago.
That's such an incredible story. And it just reminds me of, all of those things just kind of clicked into place. Your family tried to go to Honduras, you couldn't go there, then you went. I mean, it's just amazing how all of that just came together. And then those books appeared or reappeared for you.
Reappeared. They had grabbed me, but we didn't. My father kind of didn't like them, so we didn't read them after here was his birthday present. Oh my gosh, I felt like. Anyway, it was a couple years, 3 years later before I read them, and it was a life transforming experience. It was a permanent transformation. That
Yes.
set me on the bhakti path. And then, the whole bhakti path where it's so engaging and it's such a beautiful,
Engaging. Yeah.
it's not like, you can engage with bhakti in a casual way, but bhakti speaks to us in such a way that it's very absorbing, because your whole life can just be bhakti-ized and filled with devotion, filled with loving service, filled with a different way of being, becoming a giver in this world. And I think that's an interesting aspect for me, why bhakti is attractive for me as a woman, is because I feel like many women are natural givers. They are nurturers. They are givers. They're the thread of our social fabric. They hold everything together in terms of a social structure and interaction and community and the core of a family. So, and these are ways we engage with bhakti. We can engage normally in the world. It's not like a path where you have to be an ascetic and renounce everything and go to the Himalayas and meditate on the tip of your nose and try to stop breathing. Wrap your head around these very esoteric topics and talk philosophy all day long. It's very, bhakti meets us right where we are, very grounded, very much in the world and purporting to be for social activism and a participation in the world, while elevating us above the conflict, the ills of society, of the world, and grounding us personally in a spiritual practice and mindset where we can really make a difference in the world, because we ourselves are being changed and coming from a completely different platform, where everything that's imposed on us and demand on us, we're able to see things from a different light, that these are temporary, they're not permanent situations, and we are in much more control, or we have much more control, should we choose to exercise it, than we currently do. And we do it through self-control, self-reflection, self-expression. And really, I found that the only way that really happens is with a spiritual practice, because we can have all kinds of good intentions and positive visualizations and positive thinking and affirmations and all these beautiful self-help tools. But unless we're actually elevated onto a spiritual platform, they have limitations. Mm-hmm. And from the spiritual platform, we start realizing how unlimited our prospects are for interacting in a very whole way with the world and others, and really being able to make a change, make a difference.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. It just, as you were speaking, I was thinking, you had, which I've heard from many practitioners of bhakti, and I know from my own experiences, that you had a true spiritual experience that actually then went on to become part of your life. And I think that, as I talk to so many people day to day, I find that they are looking for a spiritual experience, but they don't always go beyond that experience. Excuse me. And many practices offer a spiritual experience, but like you said, there's no path to follow after that. So then you end up just constantly in search of this experience, trying to find it again and again and again. But like I said, from my experience in bhakti, like you said, we incorporate it into our lives, and every day practically becomes a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
It's just so magical.
Yeah, it's because there's so much beyond what meets the eye, right? There's so much beyond where we're very much living. And when we can tap into that place beyond time and space, which is where the soul exists, then we start having like a lot of different realizations. So much comes to us because, just think of, okay, where we are. We're in this world and there's so much variety. I mean, every day we're consumed with all kinds of variety, going here and there, and all these opportunities. And, this so much is happening. Well, this is a pale reflection of spirit, of consciousness. And when we understand that there's so much more in the realm of spirit than we experience here, and it's just as variegated, and it's more profound and more fulfilling, then we realize that, yeah, if I take up a steady practice and I connect myself with that power, like plugging myself into the socket in the wall that will give electricity, if I connect with that spiritual energy, then I will, on a daily basis, will be full with all kinds of realizations and new experiences and moments of aha, and seeing how nature speaking to me in all these ways, and people maybe saying one thing, but I'll get messages that are so much more deep as well. So it adds a dimension to our lives that we so thirst for, and that we so much need, and we so much don't have. So I have found the bhakti path very beautiful for a number of reasons, and that is definitely one of them.
Yes, yeah. Like you said, it changes your perspective on everything. I'm sorry, there are like 10 million things coming to my mind about how my perspective has changed personally. And yeah, I mean, it just gives you a new outlook on life that, separates you from.
Well, just take a real practical one. Like when I first entered the bhakti path, I was doing an intentional meditation. Whenever I would look at another person, instead of just seeing the physical form in front of me, I would see them as a spiritual being. So when I personally would wake up in the morning, okay, I would, brush my teeth, get ready, brush my hair, but I was seeing the soul at the heart. And then when I would talk or look at another person, this was very intentional. It was like forcing your mind to think of it at first. Mm-hmm. Look at the heart of that person, and they are an effulgent, beautiful spiritual being. Now, what happens is that as you practice that, then you start seeing your partner, your family, your children, your parents in a completely different light, or an expanded light at least. And it starts giving you pause to, how am I going to relate now to this person? Stop seeing the externals. We need to see beyond the externals, which are temporary and changing and oftentimes ugly, distressing, whatever they are, and see beyond. So it's a practice that becomes habit. And you actually then, with the foundation of a bhakti practice, you actually start seeing it. It's no longer just theoretical that I'm forcing myself to think like this. And what happens is that your relationships shift with yourself and with others, because you're now interacting on a truly spiritual platform, which is very interesting because so many people don't know what spirit is or what spiritual is. Like, so many people think that things that are subtle are spiritual, right?
Absolutely.
And that's not the case.
Right.
There are many things that are subtle that are material. For instance, talking with people who have died. If that soul has not left the material cosmos, you're talking to someone, although not embodied, in the material cosmos. It's a material conversation. Now it's like, wow, to us, because we can't see them and not everyone has that capacity to speak to them. So it's very enchanting, almost like, but that's not spirit. We're talking to another person who is a spirit soul, a spiritual being, but that per se is not on the spiritual platform. So,
I just want to say that I have this conversation often with people because I'm an energy worker.
Okay.
Yes. And
so
they often but they often refer to that as being spiritual. And I always have to say, no, that's subtle. That's dealing with subtle energy. That's not about my spirit or your spirit.
Just like the mind is subtle. We can't see the mind. We can't see the functioning of the mind. We don't see thoughts. We think them, we feel them, but they're not tangibly visible like this, computer screen or the book or the phone. And so then there's a confusion. Is the mind, am I the mind? Is that what the soul is? And is that spirit? No. The mind is a part of the mechanism of the body. It's mind, body. They're both material. One is subtle, one is more gross. So, for us to really start learning what is spirit, the difference between subtle matter and spirit is a huge help for us in terms of not only changing our perspective, but also determining where to invest our energy if we want to connect with spirit. Otherwise, we get confused. Just like, I've heard over the years people talk about the Akash, which in some circles is understood to be this subtle energy that has imprints from forever with all kinds of information in it, right? So for some people that might seem like a strange concept, and for some other people it sounds very interesting, even reliable and whatnot. But however you look at it, Akash is material. It isn't spiritual. Right. So, and some people make practically a religion of learning the Akash, like the chakras or something. The chakras are not spiritual. They're part of the material body. Yes. They're part of the functioning of this good vehicle that we have as souls to function in the world and interface with the world. It has chakras, it has meridians, it has so many things that look subtle, and some people may discount, and some people have experience that are real, but it's still material. So what is spiritual? Well, spirit is consciousness. It is a unit of being, knowing, and loving. And there are many of us. I'm one, you're one. We're individuals. We're individual units of spirit. And we have our experience in the body, where I have the memory of when I was a child, when I was a youth. Now I'm getting to old age. I have all these different memories. And I'm not changing, and my body is drastically changing, let me assure you. And my thoughts have changed much over the years. I have, changed opinions about all kinds of things, for instance, and feelings come and go. But I am the constant, and I'm not changing. And in the Gita, Krishna says that that unit of consciousness is eternal. And just as you see the progression of a body changing, so at death is another change of the body, but the soul goes on and is eternal. So the soul is a unit of spirit. It is a spark of the grand spirit. Just as the sun has sun rays, so the grand spirit has rays, has these finite units of energy that we are. And we are connected with that grand sun. And until we connect with that grand sun, which is spirit, we are spirit, and that is spirit, and that's not this world, and that's not these things, then we will start tapping the actual connection with spirit that I talked about, like when we plug in an electrical unit into the wall, and then we can actually be fed real electricity. We can be fed real spirituality. And to make that connection with ourselves as who we really are and our source, our spirit source, requires some practice, because we're not connected, we're distracted, we have, our heart is filled with all these other false loves and interests and desires, and we're pulled in a million different ways. And that's what makes us so unhappy and so unfulfilled and so frenetic and frantic and pulled by the world in all the ways that it does. So that's what bhakti is offers us a practice that gives us firsthand experience of spirit. Not just, I mean, yes, it has theory. Yes, it is philosophy, a very profound theology, philosophy. I mean, the oldest ancient texts in the world that are voluminous and take a lifetime to study. It's very profound.
And the depth of them.
Yeah, and the depth of them is just mind-boggling. I mean, I've been studying them for 50 years, and I'm not a brilliant person, but I'm not stupid either. And it's just mind-boggling. Yeah, so you have the real grounding in solid metaphysics, but what you have is tools for real life application. And that is the combination of which is unique. It's a characteristic of the yoga philosophies in general, that they seek to give us a firsthand experience of the theory, so that it's not just faith. We're not talking about just believing in a book. We're talking about trusting enough to say, okay, this is reasonable. This is, logic. There's reason to it. It makes sense. It even maybe speaks to me, moves my heart. But then if I engage in that practice, which is very simple actually, in the practices of bhakti, then I can personally experience what the theory is. And that is the beauty of the yoga philosophies. It's the special gem of bhakti.
Yes, that's actually one of my favorite things about the practice of bhakti, is that it is experiential. It's not, like you said, something that we believe, or, we're just studying and we have this philosophy. It goes way beyond that, which is it's just magnificent. I was also thinking about, as you were talking about, how it does give us this practice. It gives us a way to bring it into our practical lives and do it every day. As you were saying before, about how it changes your perspective and how you relate to other people and your loved ones. You see your children differently. You see your spouse or your parents. And can you imagine if we took that, if more people were having this experience, and not only looking at family members and people close to us in that way, but taking it out and looking at everyone and everything in the universe that way.
Yeah.
I mean, my
it's
goodness.
the platform. It really is the platform of true brotherhood and sisterhood that we all seek, and which harmonizes the diversity and the disharmony that we encounter because of the individuality of everyone seeking their own desires and wishes. It's really, that's the platform, that's how we come to that platform. Really, is we have the experience of those people we've seen in the world that are like mystics, where they really see the universal connection with each person, with each being, and that happens on a spiritual level, not a material level, because we are very different on a material level, but on a spiritual level, we share the same source, we share the same desires, we share the same interests, the same things that make us happy. For the spiritual being, we require love, and it has to be unconditional, which we simply do not find in this world. As much as we talk about unconditional love and a spiritual love, we find that it always fails, even if it's just a fraction, even if it's just that little fraction, but generally it's quite large how it fails. When we have betrayals or not, lack of understanding or appreciation, so many things that happen in our relationships that are so distressing. Relationships tend to be quite challenging, right, in general. So that unconditional love is available on the spiritual platform. It is a special kind of love. It's called divine love. It is not available when we're operating on the material level, when we're seeing the externals. And it can grow into the community and into the larger world by practicing it with ourselves and with our family. It starts there and then it grows, because once you actually start seeing differently the people right there in your home, in your environment, and which inspires you to therefore act differently, which changes the whole dance and the whole dynamic of these relationships. And people will pause and see how you're responding differently than other people, because you are acting on a spiritual level, and it's very attractive to people, because that's where we're from. We're on that's where we're headed. We want to go, and that's where that's on the level that we exist at, but we're not acting on.
Yeah. It's just such so gorgeous. And like you said, it touches you in such a deep way. I know my experience of bhakti has been very natural, very natural. It speaks to the soul. It's because it's where we come from, that spiritual platform. And once you connect with that spiritual platform, it is so attractive. You can't turn away from it, or you can't turn away from it for very long if you do. So yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. That was so, so beautiful. And you were making me think about your book, Wise Love, because it's very, very practical. It's very deep. It's very dense. There's a lot of information in that book, but you really break it down about how we connect, how we actually practice being spiritual people. And it's such a gift to have that.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we read philosophies, and, I've had so many conversations with people about all of these spiritual philosophies in every part of my life. And they're all these wonderful philosophies, but they're not practical. They're not giving practical ways to practice them. And in Wise Love, you do that.
Yeah, in Wise Love, I do that somewhat, for sure. Toward the end, I'm in Wise Love, I'm mostly trying to establish in comprehensible terms a very complex philosophy, to condense it and streamline what the essence of bhakti is. So I'm talking about the nature of consciousness, or the soul, and what we've been speaking about, the relationship between finite consciousness and infinite consciousness, the Supreme Person, and how that is an intrinsic connection, and without it, we feel lost, unfulfilled, or we're seeking that connection in so many ways, whether it's relationships or things, or doing, running. And then in Bhakti Shakti, the second book of the Bhakti series, I speak a little bit more about the practice. And I do that by introducing the goddess of Bhakti, Sri Radha. And that's really quite beautiful. In our philosophy, we understand the Supreme is masculine and feminine. And that's not just energetic, but people. There's a male person and there's a female person at the pinnacle of reality. And their dance of love is an invitation to us to join that dance. And specifically, the goddess of divine love, Sri Radha, is the one who extends her hand to us here. She is the personified heart of the Supreme. She's love personified. Now, just think of that for a moment. We think of love and we think what a beautiful emotion that is, especially the pure and more selfless and serving that love is. It like becomes more and more beautiful, more and more beautiful. Well, we have this extraordinary love called divine love, which is a condensation and deepening of the greatest love that we have in this world, and it becomes personified in the goddess, Sri Radha. So she is the embodiment of compassion, the embodiment of mercy, the embodiment of love. And she is not only this extraordinary expression of love in relation with the Supreme, but she is an exemplar of that love. So she exemplifies that love for us. This is how we can achieve connection with spirit. It's following her footsteps in the path of love and cultivating selfless love for our source and for her. Yeah, so Sri Radha, I speak at length about in Bhakti Shakti because I think it's a feature of the Bhakti tradition that is exceptional, gorgeous. She is a hidden gem. She is not spoken at depth in a lot of the ancient texts because she's so sacred and so special that it's not just, flippant kind of conversation. It's when we hear about Sri Radha, it's very directed. And even I find, contemporary practitioners of bhakti, they're very careful about how they speak about Sri Radha because she's so exalted, and the love that she represents that we are desirous of attaining and giving expression to is literally at the highest level of spiritual reality. It's the essence. Love is the essence of spiritual reality, but not mundane love, spiritual love. This, as a hidden treasure, she's not well known, even in the yoga communities who are more familiar with the goddesses of Hinduism. And I have seen also some of the more recent texts coming out as trade books. They don't mention Sri Radha, and the ones that do have a misunderstanding of Sri Radha. So I thought it would be important to bring her forward into the community in a way that properly describes her and what she stands for and what she offers to us. She's just an exceptional gift from the bhakti path to us. So I thought it was appropriate to introduce her to contemporary audience. And, we have to understand also the bhakti path is a very ancient path that's been practiced for millennia in India. But it didn't come to the West when the Advaita Vedanta path came, really with Vivekananda in the 1930s. When he came, he brought Advaita Vedanta, which is the thought that we're all one, we are non-different from God, we are the Supreme. And it was, it's a beautiful message that we're spiritual beings and that we're one with God. But it's not the bhakti message. The bhakti message is we're spiritual beings and we have a loving relationship with the Supreme Being. We are not God. So Bhakti Vedanta didn't come to the West that long ago. It only came about 50 years ago. So Radha is new to the Western shores. She's confidential even within India, but then she comes to the Western shores and she's hidden for so long, kind of behind the other yoga goddesses who take center stage, have taken center stage mostly, like Durga and her expansions. So here we are at really a unique point of history where Radha is becoming known to us for the first time in the Western world. And this hidden gem, unveiling it needs to be done first of all, and then done with some care. And so it hadn't been done yet for a contemporary audience. So this is my offering to the women of the world, to introduce them to Sri Radha and the beauty that she represents for our lives.
It's perfect timing. It's exactly what we need to know right now. The entire world is dealing with some struggle or another, and it is the time to connect with divine love and to connect with the source of that love and to understand. In fact, I was just thinking I want to just read this one short paragraph from Bhakti Shakti because it's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites, but it's part of a paragraph where you said, to enter her plane of love, we'll have to completely abandon the taking ego, the false ego, and embrace a serving ego. Without the serving tendency, where is the possibility of love? Without love, how can there be happiness? And I really appreciate that so much because, I feel like we're in this time in our history where it is all about taking, and everybody's kind of looking out for themselves. And what we need to do is get back to wanting to serve others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that really, because and this happens not, for a fundamental misunderstanding that we're seekers of happiness. That is the nature of the soul. It is a seeker of happiness. The problem is we think we're going to be happy with things of this world. We don't get the message, even after being disappointed so often, that things cannot make us happy. We cannot be happy no matter how many things that we think we like around us or how fancy they are, or even, and unfortunately, we start thinking of people as things also, and how they can satisfy us and what they can do for me. And this is all a misconception of who we are and what's going to make us happy. And it's a recipe for horrible actual violence toward each other, not maybe even just physical, but all the psychological violence we do to each other by this taking and wanting and looking for more and looking out for me and my family at the expense of others. There is a way of being in this world where we can all exist, cohabitate this planet without harming other people. And that starts with stopping the harm to all sentient beings, which means animals. Mm-hmm. And we often really do not get this, that, I can be loving toward my family and have no problem that millions of animals are slaughtered. It may look pretty clean to have your throat slit or a bullet put in your head, because it's maybe only a few seconds to take to die. But this is extreme violence. And we're not going to find nonviolence in our lives until we end the violence around us. And it's phenomenal that we haven't made the connections because it's hidden, obviously. We don't live next to slaughterhouses, most of us, and the stench of them and the horror of them. But as a modern society has become very rich with violence towards sentient beings. So that would be something that we could look at in our lives and see if we'd like to clean that up a little bit. And then when we become nonviolent, it manifests in our relationships with other human beings as well. But the violence with certain sentient beings will inevitably spill over to human beings as well. It's just the way the world goes around.
Yes. And that's actually a practical step that we could all take, to affect big change in the world, is simply that. That's not a big ask, I don't think, to stop harming animals.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big ask because we are accustomed to eating animals, and it's hard to make change. Like right now, I've been ill for a while, and I'm trying to determine what is the core cause of the illness. And I've come up with some understanding. And when I look at it, I realize, okay, I'm going to have to make some changes in my diet. Now, I've been a vegetarian for 50 years because, I didn't want to participate in the violence of animal slaughter. Now I'm going to have to change the way I'm accustomed to eating. Not that I'm going to now eat animals, but I mean, I'm going to have to clean up I'm going to have to choose things that I don't normally choose. Like, it's the first thing I want to do is change my eating habits. I'm accustomed to, I like eating a certain way, and I'm accustomed to that. So in some ways it is a big ask, but that's the nature of being a human being. We're not just animals,
right,
that have no reasoning power and that are blind to the suffering of others, or that are just so unfeeling that it doesn't matter when we see others suffering. I mean, for some of us, some people, we can put those blinders on, but a human being is supposed to come to a different level. And we have that capacity, and we actually want to come to that level, but it takes a little effort. And in doing that effort, it's helpful to have others who are also interested in that effort, because then it makes our lives a little easier. For instance, I'm making this diet change, and I'm planning on, how I'm going to change the meals. So it's going to be easier if my husband does it with me than if I'm doing it alone and I have to cook my meals and he's got his meals, right? Yeah. So when we have people to do it with us, it becomes easier. And so we should seek out, if we're looking at elevating our lives, if we have that spiritual thirst that's not being satisfied elsewhere, then we can begin to find a person or two that has similar interests, and then we can share the journey together, whether it's in person or on the phone, or just support each other, right? And that spiritual sisterhood is very powerful and necessary.
Yeah, and I think I'd also add just educating ourselves on these things, because I think that's often the biggest part of the problem, is that people they just don't know, or they don't understand, or haven't really connected the dots because they haven't been exposed to the other side, or what's really going on with, like you said, slaughtering animals seems so, we're so disconnected from it. People don't even realize it, even as they're sitting down at their dinner table, where they don't know where their food has come from.
I was listening to this podcast by Anthony Williams. He's called The Medical Medium.
Okay.
He's quite well known in the in the health circuit, he's well known. So he was talking about, you have to reduce your intake of fat, because so much of our problem is with a liver that is struggling to keep up with our eating habits. And so he said he was talking with someone, and he said, you have to stop eating so much cow, because the man was eating hamburgers. And the man said, I don't eat cow. He said, yeah, you do eat cow. That's what you're eating is cow. And the man was actually shocked. He was like, oh my God, that's a cow. Oh yeah, right. It hadn't occurred to them. Oh yeah, that's a cow I'm eating.
Exactly. Yeah. We're so disconnected from our food sources. We have no idea. It just shows up in the supermarket. We don't know where it comes from. We have no idea.
Yeah.
And I think that if people did have, we're again a little more educated about where their food is coming from, how it's treated before it actually comes, ends up on the supermarket shelves and things like that. I think that
and what it does to our bodies, because there is a healing crisis in the United States. There are so many people are sick with mystery illnesses, or this is just not right. So much, it's affecting millions of people, and it has to do with how we are eating.
And even the things that we are aware of, we know that they can oftentimes be reversed and definitely prevented if we eat properly.
And there you go. I know a lot of women who are cooks. They provide the meals in the family, and that's where we can really help our family, is becoming educated and providing the best that we can for them, materially and spiritually. And there's certainly plenty of information out there. And whether it's vegetarianism or veganism, there is so much nice food you can eat. It's really tasty, and you don't miss anything. And it's so wholesome and so healthy, and makes you light and happy, and would solve a lot of these mystery illnesses that we're dealing with. We're guzzling coffee and
sugar.
We need glucose, but we need proper sugars. We need fats, but we need proper fats. And here we are, women loving our children and our families. This is a very good way to love them.
Yes. Feed them properly and teach them how to feed themselves properly.
Yeah. It's like so fundamental. You think, why would you talk about that on a podcast? Well, because it's real life.
It is. Yeah, exactly.
And it's a real problem, and we should help each other.
Yeah. Because as women, we face so many challenges, and, something like that, especially, how to feed your kids properly, even if we have the knowledge, we live in societies where it's so challenging. In some places, things aren't available. In other places, in the US, we have fast food, we have processed food. We've been, things are advertised constantly, to children nowadays. It is a challenge, and we need to stick together and talk about these things to empower one another to do the best that we can.
Yeah.
Because we do face a lot of challenges in society.
Yeah.
And we need each other.
And there are ways to work around the need for fast food, where our lives are so stretched in so many ways, and we're pulled in so many directions. But people are finding ways to do meal prep ahead of time, and different creative ways to. I know that when I was raising my son and I was working full time, the weekend one day was to do something nice and interesting as the family. And a good portion of one day was preparing the food for the week. And it was fun in one way, to think ahead and make, it was fun. It was part of, it was part of what I did anyway.
I actually still do that just for myself. I still do that sometimes. Yeah, I have, because we all have freezers, we can make things, like you said, do meal prep on a weekend and freeze, you can even break things up into, this
Yeah,
is for Monday, this is for
yeah,
Tuesday, this is for, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's
In one sense, you think, oh, it's going to take more time. Well, actually, it saves a lot of time to plan and prepare and
mhm.
devote a couple of hours instead of trying to, at the last minute, I've got 30 minutes to get a meal on the plate and people are hungry and I don't have time to do prep. I don't have even time to think about it. So let's just do what's easiest. So,
Right.
yeah, that's.
Well, getting back to bhakti, and which, and actually that's part of bhakti as well. Our movement is all about feasting, dancing, and singing, and just
Bhakti
enjoying.
is the kitchen religion. Food is very important.
Yeah, yeah. So I wanted to ask you, because, and this question is really it's my own personal curiosity. What inspires you on the path of bhakti?
What inspires me? Well, I do feel a deep connection with the Supreme, my divine friend, and making that connection meaningful on a daily basis just gives me so much joy and meaning. It gives so much meaning and purpose in my life. I feel by staying connected in meaningful ways that I'm then in a position to be used in service for others. And mystical things happen, amazing things happen, and things that are synchronistic happen even more often when I'm really making that connection. And I see intelligence of life and the reason why things happen. And so everything becomes very much more alive and pertinent and real and important. And the whole world starts speaking to me in ways that when I'm not connected, I can't hear,
Mhm.
I can't see. And so that connection, it gives me the eyes of the soul, the ears of the soul to perceive what is not just on the surface. And I have never liked living on the surface. So for me, that's extremely gratifying and meaningful. And then I have so many wonderful friends that I've met on the Bhakti path. They're lifelong friends. And, there's something very special when you're sharing life's journey with someone beyond just the mundane. When you start making like soul connection, I mean, really soul connection, and you start talking about the self and the supreme person and the nature of the relationship and how to develop it and how we can do better, how we can get rid of bad qualities, efface the false ego, live on the platform of the self. This is all a process. And when we share that process with other people, these relationships become extremely deep, very profound, very fulfilling, and very beautiful.
Mhm. Yes, yes. I actually just mentioned recently in a podcast about how important it is for us on the bhakti path to connect with other practitioners.
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, it's inexplicable to people outside of our practice how deep those connections go. Thank you for sharing your inspirations, because you channel them into these beautiful projects like your books in such a lovely, lovely way. I'm always so touched when I read your words on paper, and I was wondering if you were working on any new projects right now.
Yes. I'm working on the third book. I'm working on the third book of the Bhakti series, and the fourth one is actually completed. But the third one, I hope to release in November. And that one is about sacred sound and the core practice of bhakti being mantra meditation. And for those who have been in yoga studios that offer something called the music called kirtan, they'll be familiar with the term kirtan. The book is called Prem Kirtan, Journey into Sacred Sound. And I introduced how I was, began my relationship with sacred sound and mantra meditation. And I also explore its impact within the spiritual communities and the yoga asana community, as well as the nature of sound, the nature of material sound, the nature of spiritual sound, the nature of sound with our own bodies. And then I look at the history of kirtan, very ancient history, the modern history, how it came west. And I share in very personal ways my experience of kirtan and the personal meditation called with the rosary bead, the mala beads called japa. So it kind of covers a broad, and then I also talk about in a couple chapters the deep philosophical foundation of sacred sound within our tradition. So it's a good far-ranging book, not too long, and written for our contemporary Western minds to kind of break open this kind of secret case around kirtan and all that it has to offer, because I don't think that we have, although kirtan has become more and more popular, I don't think we have completely understood its potential and its understand it as a yoga practice and the possibilities for our lives should we choose to engage in the practice. So I hope that book is an offering to my spiritual sisters and brothers out there.
I can't wait for it. I can't wait. I'll be looking out in November, and I hope that you will be willing to come back so I can talk to you about that as well.
Yeah, sure.
That's wonderful. Yes, and for those of you listening, I will be sure to post in the show notes the links to Pranada's book. I also forgot to mention that even for her book, Wise Love, there is an e-course that I have not taken yet. I've been dying to do this, but there's an e-course online that you can take that connects directly to the book. And as I said before, the book is it's just gorgeous.
I'll also give you a couple of links because I have two books that are available for free. One is called The Inner Loving Self. That's on my website, so I'll send you that link. And the other one is on Amazon called Exploring Bhakti. So those both are free. So not only is the course for Wise Love free, but then I also have two other books that are free besides Wise Love and Bhakti Shakti, which, by the way, both Wise Love and Bhakti Shakti have won numerous awards.
Oh, wonderful.
And in fact, in 2022, Bhakti Shakti won the same award that Wise Love won in 2018. I thought, oh, good, they're brother and sister for sure now.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet. Yes. Well, I am so grateful to you for being here today. And it's always so lovely to get to talk to you. I'm just so grateful that you came. And...
Oh, thank you, Tiffany. I'm so happy for your presence and the all that you offer to the people in your coming in touch and contact with you. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Like I said, I hope you'll come back when your next book is available.
Sure. Yes, no problem. And if anyone has any questions, they're free. They're welcome to write me. And I have a website. I'll give you that address, pranadacomtois.com.
Okay. Yes, I'll be sure to put that in the notes as well. Thank you again.
Take care.
You too. You too. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to this show. I hope you found something useful. Like everything in life, we can take what we need and leave the rest. Please feel free to contact me with comments or questions at womanonherpath@gmail.com.